Welcome back to the Oklahoma drill. It's myself, Ryan. We've got Alex and Nathan here, and we're gonna give you a little OU football talk. We're gonna maybe preview the bowl game to whatever extent that's possible, and talk a little bit about the goings on since our last pod. The staff, the general state of things. How is everybody doing today?
I'm pretty good. Looking forward to Bob Stoops.
Yeah,
for real.
That's about all I'm looking forward to. At the game, I don't really give a shit, but Bob, that'll be fun. So.
Yeah. So Nathan, you weren't with us last time we spoke. How are you feeling about the Brent Venables experience?
Well, whenever everything broke, his was basically the first name I really thought of. There were others that I, kind of had an idea of. Matt Rule was also rumored, and it was also one of the first names I thought about. But Venables is pretty much the name that I circled right off the bat. So whenever we found out that he was coming, I was excited. I thought it was probably the best hire they could have made that was realistic. And I think what I like about him is he's been on, I counted this up maybe 3 weeks ago. I think he's been on 8 staffs that have played in a national title game. So basically he's seen what it looks like. He knows what it takes to be successful here. He's been on a staff at Clemson that he built, where he helped build. That defense wasn't really anything before he got there, and he made it into what it is today. He's developed over a decade extensive ties in the Southeast, which OU will have to have going forward. You can already see it reflected in their current recruiting. They're focusing on Florida a lot. So I think there's a lot of positives. I think some of my concerns were how forward thinking they'll be in recruiting. They're doing some things that I think are probably wise because they really want to value offers. They really want to, make sure kids actually can play football before they offer them. But he's also reticent to take part in the elite camps. I'm not sure if he's going to be like draconian in how he values a commitment. Like if he's going to be one of the, I know at Clemson, Dabo was like, if you visit another school while you're committed to us, then you're not committed. Like you have to decommit. I'm a little afraid if I hear Brent start saying he's going to do stuff like that. I don't know. So I'm curious to see how that proceeds over the future. But I really like the hire. I think I think it's probably the best hire we could have made on paper. And I'm looking forward to having a defense that can actually do things. And I mentioned this to Alex the other day. Looking forward to watching safeties that actually, aren't just warm bodies on a field. It's been a decade plus since that's happened. So it'll be nice.
Yeah. I've settled into like 2 thoughts that are almost in conflict with regard to the Brent Venables hire. One of which is that like there's a degree to which this is just like a really feel good hire in terms of like OU went out and got a man they think will respect them, and that feels like a negative because it feels like, we're just in our feelings about it. Simultaneously, sure. There's a part of my brain that is just absolutely convinced that this coaching staff is better now. That like we like the, in a way, this might end up being one of the best things that could have happened to this program.
Well, yeah, I think that,
and it's way too early to think that, right? Because we still don't know if Brent is going to be a good head coach. We still don't know. There are so many question marks still. All 3 of us on this call are of the opinion that it would be real great if we had an entirely different set of coordinators on both sides of the ball in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I'm not super comfortable with hiring Jeff Lebby. Frankly, I don't like that they hired Jeff Lebby, and it has nothing to do with on-field performance. I think he's proven that he's a good on-field coach. The off-field stuff, it just doesn't sit right with me, but I don't get to make that call. So purely on-field wise, I think that was a strong hire. Ted Roof, I'm going to have to trust Brent on that one. I think I get what he's going for, because he's worked with Brent already, and he's got extensive ties and like recruiting Georgia. And I think that's part of it. But man, that is not the hire I would have made. But I'm going to have to trust Brent on that. And I think, more than anything else, it's Brent's defense, and it's Ted Roof just might be, the guy that it gets funneled through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that Ted Roof is going to be calling all the shots on this defense. I just don't believe that. So maybe 3 years from now, if Brent is successful and the next defensive coordinator, they might start branching out, kind of like what George has done with Kirby Smart. And, he initially had Mel Tucker, and Mel Tucker started having individual success. And now he's had Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning's had his own spin on the defense. It's not just Kirby's defense anymore, but it's certainly still a heavy imprint. I'll be curious to see how that kind of unfolds. I don't really see Ted Roof getting a head coaching job, but he's old enough, he might retire. I don't know. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. The Ted Roof thing is kind of head scratching, but we'll see. I think the jury's still out on that.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'll say with, I think last podcast I talked about, having some mild concerns about how Brent would approach the portal, which I think is so far being proven. It's kind of being disproven. Like we've already taken 2 guys out of the portal, and we seem to just be fairly active. So that's really nice to see. There was some recruiting things that I was a little concerned about. Like he talked about the valuing the offer stuff, which it makes sense. I understand what he's going for, but he's also not being like ridiculous about it. I
really
think
stingy.
Like there's a certain extent to where, because of Clemson's location and the success they've had recently, they can do a little bit, they can get away with it a little bit more, I would say, than what we could. So if we're waiting way too long to offer a kid, that's going to screw us over every time.
It makes sense to a point.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense anymore.
So all of that has been really proven. Like I feel like I've been proven wrong so far, and not necessarily that I was expecting that to be the case, but that was just where I had some concerns, and I think that the easiest way to like convince yourself that this is going to go well is to kind of look at the previous regime. And it's not hard to build a case that the previous regime did a terrible job, if we're just being completely honest. Like, yes, there is the winning percentage and all of that, but like there is that argument that you can make that, well, player development sucked. Like there's really no way around that, We've talked about receiver talent for days. We had that 2019 class that was supposed to, it was like a top 5 class, and it was supposed to be like the class that leads the charge for the next national championship hunt, which should have been this year. And all of those guys underachieved. Most of them are gone. Theo Weiss is the only one that's still here out of that big 5-star group. And he hasn't played like a 5-star yet, even when he's been healthy. So that to me is, obviously, for all we know, this regime could be worse, but to me, it's hard to kind of look at Brent Venables and look at the track record and think that he's at least going to be able to develop defensive football players. And then it becomes on him to hire a good offensive staff. And if you look at the offensive staff, I think on paper, it looks nice.
I mean, I fully expect, defense-wise to be legitimately good by year 3. I mean, legitimately good, like top 15 in the country good. And if you look at Clemson, that's what their track record was. I think they were around 70 for a couple of years because they were bad whenever he got there. And then they just leapt forward. And maybe, I don't remember exactly which years, year 3, year 4, they were number 1 in the country. It was 2015. So it might've been year 4, but anyway, it was, and then they just stayed there. So I would expect, I don't know if I expect us to be OU to make number 1 in the country. That's hard to ever expect, but I certainly think they'll be a stalwart defense, for once he gets his guys and once he gets that culture in place for a few years, moving forward. I think Alex nailed it. It's all about how he hires the offensive side, and if that hire can work in concert with his defense. I know Levy does things more with pace than, say, what Tony Elliott was doing at Clemson. So how does that impact defensive performance? Luckily, he's in the Big 12, and the Big 12 is surprisingly not really an offensive league anymore. So
right.
We'll see.
What do you guys think about? I think that the whole pace of play for the offense, I think that gets a little bit overblown to a large extent because, ideally the best thing for a defense is for the offense to score.
I think it has merit to an extent. I don't think it's the end all be all, but I think if you're on field for 95 snaps versus 65 snaps, you're going to have issues, or you're going to have worse, outcomes. So
yeah, my suspicion is
from a statistics standpoint.
Yeah, I think where it comes into play is like as snap count increases, like you get fatigue, and both sides are experiencing that. But defensive mistakes are more significant than offensive ones.
If you think about it, one's moving forward and the other is trying to defend that. So it just makes sense that it takes more effort to defend back basically than to proceed. That's why you have to sub defensive lineman every 3 snaps, but offensive lineman can stay out there because they're pushing, not chasing. But I don't think, again, I don't really care if OU is 20th in the country in defense, if we have a top 20, top 15 offense. I don't really care. It's kind of like whenever we had the best offense in the country, but we were 110th in defense, or, something crazy bad. I think it kind of becomes moot if you're just so lopsided. I'd much rather be super balanced. And if you look at those Clemson title teams, their offense was more like top 10, maybe top 12, but they were good enough, elite enough compared with the top, 12, top 10 defense to be able to get over the hump. So that's really what I think you're aiming for, is to be really good on both sides. Maybe not top 1, but, top 10, top 15.
Yeah. I guess the other thing is I just like, this conference doesn't really play with tempo anymore. Not really. It's the hurry up and wait style, where it's about you use hurry up to like ensure personnel advantages that you desire. Yeah. And maybe you rattle off like 2 or 3 plays quickly. But the only and I don't even know if this is necessarily true anymore. The only team I can think of in the Big 12 that is still going really fast is Oklahoma State.
I think TCU will, because they were at SMU.
Yeah.
That staff. I think they're going to start doing it more. But I could be wrong, because SMU was Garrett Riley, right? So I'm assuming he's running Lincoln's offense. So maybe they weren't doing that. I don't know. I just know it was Dykes, and he certainly did when he was at Cal. So I can't say I've actually watched SMU that much. So, but yeah, I don't know. And we haven't even talked about Schmitty coming back. I think that was a really instrumental hire for Brent. And we've talked about this in the past. I don't actually know how much of an impact, a strength and conditioning coach, like a really good one, has compared to just a good one, what that difference is. But it sure does seem like there is some culture issues just being rumored out there from how Wiley was or was not pushing people. And ex-players, they love to tell horror stories, but they also speak glowingly about Schmitty. So I'm really interested to see how that, if we see noticeable improvements as far as strength of line play. I think it's been no secret our offensive line has been kind of underwhelmed the last few years. How much of that was strength and conditioning, I'm not sure. I'd really like to see what Anton Harrison looks like next year.
Right.
See how some of those guys progress.
I think there's something to be said for large groups going through something that absolutely sucks together.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily think that that was what was going on. You know, I think
Yeah,
that,
I think there's some bonding you get out of that.
yeah, I think that,
It's
you know,
like
Vinny
Miracle.
Wiley's, yeah,
They all hate
I-
the coach, gives them someone as a group to hate and not hate each other.
right, exactly. And so Wiley's system was, I think, a lot more, we'll call it player friendly. We'll just say, I don't know exactly what was going on, but you know, you could turn on to the Instagram stuff. Like, you're not going to see any of that shit with Schmitty. Like those dudes are not going to want to be on Instagram going through a Schmitty workout.
I didn't even
they're
get to see the Instagram stuff.
Miserable. You didn't even get to see it?
No, because I tried to follow. Now we're getting into a tangent, but his Instagram was private after a while, so I followed him and he never approved it. So I never even got to see it. Yeah.
Oh.
But
yeah.
They love
it was just like, oh, these guys are exercising, you know, like they're just going through and having some fun exercising, you know.
Yeah,
and like, yeah, and so like the idea of, no, like they're gonna be going through hell, I think, to be completely honest, you know. And you know, say what you want, yeah, it might be an old school thing, I don't know, I've never been through it, I have no interest in ever going through anything like that.
No, the people that say they want to go through a Schmitty workout are insane. They have no idea what they're talking about.
But I
don't know what I'm talking about, but I know enough to that I don't want to do it. So
right. Every place he's been, his teams have been successful. I mean, that's just reality. You know,
they
went to
A&M's
A&M.
done. Yeah. I mean, they haven't been great, but they've been better than they've ever been, you know, the last other 20 years. So.
Yeah, for sure. So that'll be really interesting. Like, and I think offensive line and defensive line is really where strength and conditioning matters as much as more than anywhere else. And you know, if you look at those dudes, even at A&M, like, yeah, they're big time recruits, but they're also like, they look ridiculous by their second or third year in that system.
DeMarvin Leal, they look the part.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like, you know, if you look at those position groups since Schmitty left, it's like a lot of disappointment, I think. Outside of wide receivers, probably the position groups since then that have seemed the most underachieving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like every year we've gone in thinking, oh, we've got this great offensive line coach who every year that he was there with Schmitty, his offensive line's overachieved. There was never underachievement with Bill Bedenbaugh. Think about it. His first year was 2013. The talent on that line sucked, but he put together a unit.
Deontay Savage against Alabama.
He started Bronson Irwin at right tackle. He'd never played tackle before, and they held up. You know, like
Derek Farniok.
Derek Farniok started against Oklahoma State that year. All of those guys, he got a lot out of all of those guys. And 2014 was a legitimately good offensive line. We ran the ball great that year. You know, our quarterbacks sucked, so we couldn't throw the ball very well. 2015, we made the playoff with some
Cosatati, Jonathan Alvarez, a true freshman, Drew Samia.
Yeah, like legitimate guys that like would not see the field today at Oklahoma.
And sorry to go right back to Clemson, but they haven't even had that like great of offensive lines. They've won outside of the offensive line. So
yeah,
I mean, again, this kind of goes back to the can we pair team, you know, sides of the ball. I have a lot of confidence in Brent. You know, it's really going to be how that offensive side of the ball kind of shakes out. And I think that having the strength coach in place, hopefully, again, I already mentioned it, but I really want to see Anton Harrison because I think that's a guy that, you know, I think a lot of people had really big expectations for this year, and he just kind of was there. I think he had some good moments, but he didn't have to take the leap that I think people were kind of expecting, or at least maybe I was expecting.
And when you hear guys like talk about Anton Harrison, Andrew Rame, guys going into their second year, you know, like they just got to be stronger. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've listened to Gabe Eichert say, Andrew Rame he's going to have to get in the weight room. Like, you know, this is pre-Schmitty. Like, it was just like, he's just not strong enough to do what they're asking him to do consistently, you know?
Well, it seems like that's been the case for a couple of years now. And then there's just been conditioning. Like, I don't know what the issue was with like Tyrese Robinson and Marquise Hayes, but it seemed like, you know, they didn't get stronger as they progressed. And I don't know if that was a conditioning thing or if that was just a them thing, but it's
Right.
hard not to think that it might have been a bit of both, if not heavier in the, if conditioning might have been a big part of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it. I don't remember ever hearing a single player talk about, man, those Wiley workouts, they really pushed me. I don't know if I ever heard anyone say that. So,
Right. Well, I brought this up on our last podcast, but a guy like Bray Walker, he just never saw the field because his body was never right.
Yeah.
It looks like $1 million bucks, but he's got cement blocks for feet. So we'll see.
Cement blocks. He's never gotten, his athleticism hasn't changed ever since.
I don't think he has the mindset, but hopefully he proves me wrong. I'd love that.
Well, but part of mindset is what your coaches are able to like pull out of you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So.
Yeah. Think about Daryl Simpson too. Like that guy.
I try not to, but
yeah. But that guy came into OU and just this massive mountain of a human being, not dissimilar from a guy like Orlando Brown. And I'm not trying to say that he should be playing like Orlando Brown, but if you like, Orlando Brown went about as good as you could go for that kind of projection as a player. And Daryl Simpson is like the exact opposite. And it's just, I'm not saying that with Schmitty, it would have gone totally differently, but either it would have gone better or he wouldn't be at Oklahoma anymore, is what I'm going to say with Schmitty. Because
it's kind of amazing he still is at Oklahoma.
Yeah, but you don't want guys like that just taking up a spot on your roster if they're just never going to do anything, And I think that either Schmitty's going to pull something out of him that he didn't have before, or he's going to transfer, and that's totally fine. Either way, you just need to not have guys on your roster that do absolutely nothing, that just accomplish zero by being on your roster.
Oh, and if you look sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but OU has basically all of their young offensive linemen have strength questions. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Nate Anderson needs to get bigger, needs to get stronger. Aaron Parks needs to get bigger, needs to get stronger. There's not very many, like we looked at Bryce Foster 2 years ago, guys that are just naturally already there strength wise. They basically all have to be built up. So I think out of the freshmen, I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Taylor comes in and immediately able to play, but Jacob Sexton needs to get stronger. So hopefully we see a strength and conditioning staff. I think Schmitty's bringing in a guy that I can't think of his name, but someone that was here in the past regime that followed him down to A&M. I think he's coming back too. So it's already guys that have some experience working together. So hopefully we see some strides taken as far as that's concerned. Really, I'm just here for the horror stories and probably the subtweets that come out of it.
No, I mean, I remember back in the day, like early on in my college life, like Tony Jefferson tweeting about Schmitty and how much he hated those workouts, like Tony Jefferson, Aaron Colvin, all of those guys that were on the roster back then. And you don't see anything like that anymore,
God, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I think that we miss that, and the fact that it's become, and it might be a pattern for Wiley because this is the same kind of stuff that people at Texas were talking about after he left. So, I don't really know enough about the science of what they should be doing, but I do know that Jerry Schmidt's track record and his ability to apparently, produce elite offensive linemen throughout his career, especially at Oklahoma, it's pretty much unparalleled. And so that in itself is exciting to have back in the program.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, whenever I heard those Texas things, I kind of dismissed them because I think his last year was the year they almost won the Big 12. So I was like, they're just saying stuff. But maybe there's some truth to it. But yeah, I don't. You hit it on the head. I don't know much about strength and conditioning either, as far as the science, how to really dissect it. But
the truth of
the
science is, I don't think many people know anything. There's a lot of bluster in that world. And I think what that leaves you with is, well, what are the results?
Yeah.
Right.
And Schmidt
What can
has
you
produced
prove?
results.
Well,
Yeah,
I think a lot of that
absolutely.
is like coaching. There's a lot of guys that get a lot of hype or, are super active on social media, but the results don't really say much. But I think you can kind of circle this back to why Venables is an exciting hire. He's been in like 8 national championship games.
Yeah.
He's won half of them, roughly half of them.
Here's the thing about Venables' championship experience that really excites me. Is Brent Venables was, I think you look and you say probably Brent Venables and Trevor Lawrence are 2 of the key figures and basically the only ass kicking Alabama has received in a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably so.
I'll throw Justin Ross in there because he was one-handed catching them to death.
That was one of the most ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nothing was going
Absolutely
wrong
insane
that night. It was crazy.
Held them scoreless in the second half and put up 44 on them. But that is, and it's just, that just doesn't happen to Alabama. And
No.
that's, so there you go. I think that's the resume point.
What can Nathan or either of you, can you guys kind of talk about, because I mean I've kind of watched a lot of, I'm not going to say I've watched film. I've watched highlights of just teams that Brent Venables coordinated, and what sticks out to you from like what he does defensively, and in comparison to what we've seen at OU the last 10 years, essentially with Mike and Alex Grinch?
Well, the first thing is he's led the country the last decade in sacks and tackles for loss. Clemson has. I think he's very aggressive. He blitzes from a lot of surprising places. He's not super predictable. You're going to hear the word multiple a lot, which probably might give some PTSD to people.
We hated it. Well, we hated it when Mike said it a lot, but also Mike's defenses
I'm fine
were
with
bad
the word multiple
and not good at defense.
Yeah. Multiple is fine if there's like a reason and logic behind it. If it's just like throwing stuff against the wall, then it's different. But I mean, I that's the thing that sticks out to me about Brent's defense is they're just extremely aggressive. And I remember I would watch his defenses usually like playoff, conference title games, because I didn't watch Clemson a ton during the regular season because they were usually winning by a lot. I didn't care. But I remember seeing, corner blitzes or, Mike linebackers running straight up the gut and thinking, man, we never see this for Oklahoma. Why does this never happen for our defense? Just you're seeing, guys like Ben Boulware, James Skalski just run straight up the middle of the line and get pressure, or they're sending Trayvon Mullen on a corner blitz or whatever. So that's really the hallmark to me, is they're just extremely disruptive, lots of negative plays.
Yeah, I think so. There's a video on YouTube called "Every OU Football Defensive Touchdown Since 1999," and it was posted in 2018. So obviously there have been some years since then. There's no Grinch tape on it, but the Brent Venables era ends. It's a 24-minute video. The Brent Venables era ends 18 minutes into the video. So yeah, there was one, according to this video, and there are probably some things this video missed. There was one defensive touchdown in 2012.
Wow. And that was Mike's first year. I went back and recently, just to kind of, I don't even know why, but I went back and watched Tavon Austin's highlights from that 2012 West Virginia game.
Man, how do you do that?
Yeah, I know. And we should have known that it wasn't going to work with Mike that night, just straight up that night, because his plan against that offense was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
It's the second worst game I've ever watched OU play on defense, I think.
The issue there, though, is that when you get lit up by West Virginia, the traditional response is you go hire Brent Venables.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. The fact, I don't even want to get into it. It was bad. It was really bad. We should have known immediately.
What's pretty funny go ahead. Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that, Alex Grinch did a much better job at OU than Mike Stoops. That's
absolutely.
Unquestionable. Like, he had a plan, and he was in the process of executing that on the recruiting trail. I think his plan is stupid. If I'm being completely honest, like, it's just simply a flawed plan. Like,
I don't like his defensive line plan.
Right. And it won't work at the highest levels of football.
No, you can't have 280-pound defensive tackles.
No, you can't have that. And you can't I don't think you can move and do as much weird shit up front and really succeed at this level. But, with Brent, everything about his defense is about confusing the offense. Alex Grinch is not about confusion. It's just like, we're going to do our stuff, and we are going to do it as fast as we can. We don't really care what happens as long as we do it fast. And Brent, it's all about, like, this dude, like, we're going to drop our defensive tackles into coverage just because it'll confuse them, and, like, he does all kinds of funky stuff that just throws other teams off. Sometimes it gets lit up. Sure, you're going to get lit up sometimes. Georgia got lit up in the SEC title, and they're one of the best defenses ever, but I think when Brent had time, especially to prepare for people, that dude delivered,
Yeah.
Think about the 2008 national title game. Florida's offense was great. Our defense wasn't thought of that highly that year, but we came in and we really performed in that game.
Yeah. So sad. Yeah. I'm looking for, I don't know what to expect next year. If we're like top 40, I'll be pretty happy. Honestly, I don't have super high expectations. But I'll be really curious to see how much of it, looks like what Clemson was doing versus, I don't expect to see like a big Ted Roof stamp on it. So I think it'll be basically Brent's defense.
Yeah. I want to say real quick on Ted Roof. I wish we had hired somebody else. It's not inspiring at all. But one of the things that stuck out to me with how Brent described that hire was, yes, he mentioned the recruiting ties, which, we're already recruiting a linebacker that we have a special in with because Ted Roof recruited this kid's dad. So that's great. I think that might be some kind of regular thing, which would be absolutely hilarious to me if we're consistently getting guys because Ted Roof knew their dad really well. Like, that would be great to me.
I love that. We gotta, we talk about these guys who recruit well, and it's what we're forgetting in this is that it's not all about Instagram. Sometimes it's about whose dads you know.
Exactly.
And this guy is plugged into the dads of Southeastern America.
Yep. Ted Roof knows
so many Georgia dads, Yep.
It'll be amazing if we get this kid that I'm thinking of, Sammy Brown, this linebacker. I'm full credit going to Ted Roof for recruiting his dad. But the other thing that Brent Venables mentioned, like, right off the top, is that he's one of the best teachers he's ever seen, and that to me is what we need on this defense. Is we need a guy who knows how to teach a defense. He doesn't have to be a genius. Brent's the genius. Yeah. But if he's the guy
already spent a year teaching it at Clemson.
If he's the guy that can communicate it and teach it to the players at a high level, that's what we need. That's what Brent Venables needs. We don't need, would it have been great if Dan Lanning didn't get the Oregon job and then he decided he didn't want to coach with Kirby anymore and he came? Sure, that would have been awesome. But
then it probably would have been Dan Lanning's defense and not Brent's defense. So what do you do?
Right. Then? Exactly. So I'm cautiously optimistic about what we're going to see from Ted Roof. I'm already kind of annoyed by the meme of the whole thing where everybody's just talking about anytime anything good happens, everybody's like, Ted Roof did it. That's very annoying to me. But, I'm very excited about the prospect of him knowing all the dads and getting recruits that way, and his ability to teach the defense, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Ted Roof thing, like, if Texas had hired Ted Roof, I'd be making fun of it. So
it's a silly thing to do.
To be seen.
It's okay.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. But I can see logic behind it. But I'm just hopeful. I trust Brent about defense more than I trust Joe Schmo on Twitter. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I trust Brent on defense more than I trust Sark to make offensive hires, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, yeah,
there's
Sark inherited, the most talented roster in the country, just didn't have to screw it up. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So.
Brent, see, that's okay. Let's get really quickly. Let's delve into that. Sark was lauded as a genius, which we can rightfully say he had an amazing season at Alabama, but he also had like 11 NFL, players on his team. Brent took over a team that got shredded by West Virginia in a bowl game, which the previous coordinator at Clemson was Kevin Steele, which is kind of funny because he ended up being a very good coordinator at Auburn. But anyway, and then he had a whole thing with Tennessee, and which was kind of funny. But Brent took over a roster that was way lower on talent and built it and sustained it at an incredibly high level. I would feel much more comfortable with the guy that had to take over a lower talent level and built it and maintained it and taking over than the guy that inherited, the best roster in the country and just didn't have to crash the Corvette, So I think we can say, to me, if you're rolling the dice on a coordinator, give me option B, because at least that guy's done something that takes, more than just calling the play to the wide open Devontae Smith.
Sure. Well, and I think one thing that's being kind of overlooked a little bit is Brent's tenure at Oklahoma, because it was a while ago and it wasn't that highly thought of at the end. But if you go back and look at the S&P Plus numbers, we were the 7th ranked defense in the country in 2011. And that was Brent's last year. That was the year everybody wanted to kill him. And they just thought he was terrible. We were the freaking number 7 defense in the country. Mm-hmm. And if you look at his staff that he was working with, he had Jackie Shipp recruiting his defensive tackles who had literally stopped doing his job like the last 2 or 3 years that he was at OU. Like he was done. Didn't recruit defensive tackles. He had Willie Martinez coaching his DBs. He had Bobby Jack Wright. No offense, Bobby Jack Wright did a lot of great things, but he was over the hill,
he was almost retired. Right.
He was still putting together a defense that was top 10 in the country in S&P Plus. Like I'm so sick of hearing total defense numbers. I don't care about them, especially if you're going to cite numbers from that era in the Big 12.
Yeah.
We were playing those teams. Get out of here. That dude's tenure at Oklahoma was very, very successful defensively.
Well, that's
inarguable.
Like you mentioned, that 08 defense wasn't that highly thought of. Well, they were playing Todd Reesing and Chase Daniel and Colt McCoy and all the Graham Harrell,
Oklahoma
all these
States,
other Zach Robinson. So every single team had a great offense.
Yeah.
No other conference had that. So
no, even Kansas State had Josh Freeman, and he was pretty good there. He was a first round pick, which doesn't say much because he was tall, but he wasn't bad. Right.
So.
Yeah. It's just, we were just slow to understand what was going on with defense. And Brent threw some gems out there, every single year, not just 2009, they were really great. 2011, you go back and look at some of those games. He was holding teams to less than 20 points pretty much every game, except for the elite of the elite teams.
And I think something that, we kind of touched on this earlier, he's been at the pinnacle. It's not like he went away and just kind of toiled and, he was at, Tennessee and he was, doing pretty good, but he wasn't doing great the last 10 years. He's been consistently putting out top 5 defenses and winning national titles. He knows what it looks like on that side of the ball. So he doesn't really have to recalibrate his brain to, okay, I was here. Now, what does it look like that's what I'm trying to get to. No, he already knows what that looks like. He just has to go get those guys here. So I don't know. It's a roll of the dice. It's always going to be a roll of the dice. There's no certainties in coaching hires. And anyone that says there is ridiculous. But I think given the information and the timetable we had, I don't know how much better they could have done. And I don't know who that would have been. That would have been better, frankly. Even Matt Rule. I liked Matt Rule and I liked the option, but I can't say definitively that it would have been a better hire. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think Matt Rule would have been a better hire. I think this was better.
Just straight up.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of, I think that after the Kansas State job opened and Brent didn't take it, I think people just assumed he would never do it. And I think that took him off the table for a lot of people in terms of their opinion.
He told people he didn't want to take one. So
right.
But I think that was always a caveat probably for a few jobs that he would do.
But the reality is I don't name a better coordinator in football than him at Clemson.
There isn't one. Not in college. He's the best one.
Yeah, not for that longevity. He's been doing it for over 20 years.
Right.
It's pretty insane. And that's one of the things that when OU had Lincoln as the head coach, after his second year, I think at OU, I said, and this was a major homer take, but I was thinking as long as Lincoln's here, we're always going to have a top 3 offense. I don't even have to worry about it, and I said, confident.
If we have a good offense with Jalen Hurts, we'll never have a bad offense.
Right. Yeah. And the reality is that was proven to be incorrect. That Lincoln got figured out and he didn't really have a second punch to go to. I don't think that's going to happen with Brent, just because there is 20 years of track record that he's going to get some shit figured out. And so I think you can pretty comfortably say that we're never going to have a bad defense with him as the head coach, especially once he gets into it a couple years. Maybe this first year we struggle a little bit, but past year 2 or 3, I don't expect us to ever have a defense that's outside the top 20 of S&P plus, if I'm being honest, and that gives you a pretty large margin of error on offense, and if you're bringing in talent consistently offensively, all you got to do is you got to nail one hire, you got to nail that OC hire and you're golden. You're going to be a contender, because if you've got a top 20 defense, you need a top 20 offense, and you've got
the Clemson
something.
Model. Great defense and a quarterback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think that in that sense, that's not something that Matt Rule would have afforded. There wasn't anything that you could just assume, oh, well, we have Matt Rule, so that's going to be fine. Not like it is with Brent Venables, in my opinion. Yeah. And so that's really exciting to me. And just as far as from what we've seen so far in his tenure, he hasn't coached the game. He hasn't really done hardly anything. He's recruited, and he's had some press conferences and stuff. But I think that the biggest concern I had with losing Lincoln was that we would take a step back in recruiting. And I think from what I'm seeing so far is that I think things will look differently in terms of the types of positions that we land our highest rated guys. But I think we're going to wind up in the same type place as we were with Lincoln from a talent standpoint.
Well, and the thing with what Lincoln was doing is we were landing those highly rated guys, but they weren't doing anything. So who cares? If we land a 5-star wide receiver, but he gets 500 yards in a career, who gives a shit? So,
for sure.
I have a higher faith. If Brent lands, 5-star defensive end and he's excellent, but he only lands that, not as often as Brent or Lincoln was landing, the highly rated skill guys. See, that's the thing with Lincoln. He was landing highly rated guys, but they're all skilled players. I would much rather land highly rated corners and highly rated, pass rushers and so on and so forth.
Defensive tackles. That's the position.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So
I think we'll have a better likelihood of doing that with Brent than we ever would have with Lincoln.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think there's the development. It can't be much worse than what we were doing. If we're just,
I wonder if he can convince DeAndre Moore to be a safety. That'd be cool. but
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Like, as far as the current roster goes, we'll talk about defense first, but how do you feel like the guys we have right now fit what Brent's gonna want to do?
I'm a little worried about defensive line just because they're small.
Yeah.
I think the defensive backs, frankly, are pretty good. Are going to be pretty good, almost immediately. I'm mainly concerned about the line of scrimmage, but I think part of that was by design, is we were intentionally keeping them lighter and faster, and I think that will slightly change, and they're going to get bulked up some. So, like a guy like Jalen Redmond, I would imagine he'll play outside in a lot. He might be like a strong side defensive end, sometimes a 3-tech. But we need to find guys that can play I don't know who's going to play the nose, or not the one, excuse me, the nose, the one. So, I mean, I imagine that'll be like Corey Roberson and guys like that, but that'll be really interesting. I think that's where it's going to take time for the most part they're going to need a couple classes to kind of fortify that.
Yeah, I think we have the guys on the edge to be successful. I think Reggie Grimes fits perfectly.
Yeah, like Ethan Downs, I think, will be fine.
Yeah, even a guy like Clayton Smith, I think you put a little 10, 15 pounds on him, I think he's fine.
Yeah, because Brent wasn't always 4 down all the time. Like, he had a guy like Vic Beasley that could stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with you. I'm worried about interior defensive line, which, I
was worried about it even before Brent. I mean,
sure.
Brent was still here. So
yeah, I was worried about it when we were doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we talked about it probably 3 years ago. I was like, I don't know about this, let's be 280 pounds and just be fast idea. But
right.
We'll see.
And I think maybe the end of his tenure at OU the last time might be a good kind of insight into how it's going to look early, because we didn't have just straight up dudes at defensive tackle by the end of his tenure. I mean, we're talking about Casey Walker, Jamarcus McFarland. Those guys were fine. They were okay players, but they weren't game changers, So that might be what we're looking at for a year or two until we can pull in some.
Yeah, I think that
some guys.
It has to be kind of what's expected.
Yeah,
and I don't know if how quickly they'll be able to turn that around. Like, if you look at the 2016 Clemson team that won a national title, that entire defensive line was like sophomores. So granted, they were, a couple 5-stars in there, but not all of them were. And largely, Austin Bryant, Dexter Lawrence was a 5-star, but they had several guys in there that, So the two tackles were 5-stars. They also had Carlos Watkins was a senior, but their edge guys were not 5-stars, and they were just they're 4-star guys. But the point is, they were young. They weren't okay. We finally have these guys. They're talented and they're seniors now. And we're ready.
Yeah.
He was able to kind of replenish it fairly quickly, or not replenish, but get a group that was ready, young. So I wouldn't say we're going to be trotting out a couple of 5-star defensive tackles in 2 years, but I wouldn't be against it. But I certainly think,
Would you take the 5-stars? Would you take them?
I mean, how are their hearts?
If Dindy wants to, realize that he's a defensive tackle, that'd be cool. But
that'd be pretty nice.
Like, buddy, you're not a defensive end. I'm sorry. You're 6'3", 290 pounds. But.
Yeah, for real. How do we feel about offensively fitting the Jeff Lebby system? And we'll talk about Caleb Williams here in a minute, but just let's say outside of Caleb Williams, how do we feel about the personnel, just generally speaking, over there?
I think it's fine. I think offensively our personnel's been really good. So
yeah, I think
I'm not that concerned about it.
I mean, I think the line needs to make the improvements we'd like to see it make.
Yeah,
with Schmitty's involvement.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Now, if they do that, then it could be like top 5 next year or top 1.
I'd like to see a running back that was truly, a dude and not just a running back. I mean, Kennedy's good. I don't want to take anything away from Kennedy, but he's not like a take over the game kind of guy. Well, unless he's playing Texas, but you know, I'd like, I know Alex has been high on Marcus Major. That body type, I mean, suits what Levy wants to do. He wants to run the rock a lot. So if he has a physical guy that can, take that or handle that, that would be really good. I think Eric Gray could be, hopefully they'll actually use him out of the backfield some next year.
Yeah. I really wish we would just take Zach Evans in the portal,
Yeah, I don't know what's up with
That'd be
that.
handy.
He's good. That's who we need.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like we're actually interested, but
Does he fit our culture? That's the question.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be here a year. Just let him carry the rock 250 times next year.
Just Bijan.
Yeah. And just win a bunch of football games with Zach.
I do like Levy just immediately grabbing Jaden Gibson because I think that kid's pretty damn good. But
I can't believe what we did. We took advantage of a coaching change. It's what A&M and Texas did, but we lucked into that. We got a quarterback that theoretically fits Levy's system really well, even though he probably won't be playing under Levy by the time he's the starter, if he's ever the starter. And then, Jaden Gibson, like top 50 player in the country, just sitting there waiting for a team to jump in late. Like, what kind of luck is that? Jesus, that's awesome.
I think, and he's tall. We haven't had a tall receiver that was worth a damn since Malcolm Kelly 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So literally 15 years
Jeff
ago.
Mead, I still love you.
Jesus.
Oh, Jeff Mead. Oh.
Jeff. Yeah. All right. So what do we think about Caleb?
I think he stays.
It feels like he's staying.
You have a percentage? Anybody want to throw a percentage on that?
I would say 80%.
80%.
I would probably also say 80%.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. I just think if he was going to move, he would have already done it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm leaning the other way. I think it's 45% that he stays, 55%.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just don't know why he would play a bowl game for a team that.
I just think that's who he is. Everything about that kid just seems like he is like the leader type, and leaders, he would want to finish what he started this year. You know what I mean?
So if he transfers, do you think he's going to USC?
I don't think he's going to go to USC.
So where do you think he goes? Ohio State has a quarterback. Georgia has a quarterback. Well,
Does Georgia have a quarterback?
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe Georgia, but does he want to play in that offense? Maybe.
What about Notre Dame? What about a school like Michigan? Like, I think there are options for him to play at schools. And the reason why I'm leaning towards him leaving is because I think that his number one priority over everything else is it's not being the number one pick in the NFL draft. Like, obviously he wants to do that, but I think he feels like he can do that anywhere. I think he wants to be like not the typical rookie quarterback when he gets to the NFL. I think he wants to be as absolutely prepared as he can be for the NFL when he gets there. And I don't think that's Levy's offense. I don't see that as a fit for that idea.
I don't see Nathan
giving the
I just don't
look.
I mean, what has Notre Dame or Michigan proven from a quarterback perspective in the last 10 years?
Ian Book's starting an NFL game right now.
Yeah.
It's not going well.
Sure.
I think that's totally true. But like, what has Michigan had from a talent standpoint at quarterback? Like,
hey, do not besmirch the name of Tate Forcier.
I will do that, like, and Tommy, like, isn't Tommy Rees like one of the most highly respected OCs in the country right now? Like, and they run more of a pro style thing. Like, I know I'm not like, these are not like obvious slam dunk things, but I could see him looking at those situations.
That respect to Tommy Rees, but that's true.
I mean, I'm just saying. So,
like,
okay.
Here's the schools he visited, right? Stanford, Penn State, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma.
I mean, Clemson's staff is different, or the offensive coordinator is different. LSU's different. I already forgot the other ones, but Ohio State's taken, Georgia makes some sense. I could see him going to Georgia.
Yeah.
That'd be really funny if he ended up battling Brock Vandegrift for a starting role. But
that would be.
But I don't know. I just don't think he's going to do it. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it'd certainly suck because we might really be asked next year if he's not here. But
Casey Thompson will come in and save us. I'm
well,
calling it now.
I did think Casey Thompson was better than people. He just got his ass kicked so much last year. Good grief. But
yeah, no, it'll be really good because me being at the University of Texas right now, going to school, I talked a lot of shit about Casey Thompson, and to all of my friends,
you have to a 180.
Football, I will fully turn to, well, what's he supposed to do behind that offensive line? Immediately,
that's what I thought
as soon as he enrolls.
Their offensive line was just brutal this past year. So
yeah, what's he supposed to do behind that offensive line? I'm starting right now. I'm already starting.
Yeah, they did have two good players on that team, and then one of them got hurt. So
yeah, and he did a great job of getting the football to the other one, to Xavier Worthy. He did a great job.
That's true.
That's true. I think it's going to be a great fit for us with Casey Thompson. He's going to beat the shit out of Texas next year. That would be an amazing story, by the way.
Like the kid that was from UCF is transferring to UCLA.
Yeah.
Do we not think he would have held off a little bit more if he didn't think there was no shot at OU?
I don't know. I mean, it's entirely like the fact, like, it seems like this is pretty late in the game, and you've got quarterbacks that are starting to pick spots.
That's why I'm saying I think if he was going to do it, he would have done it. Or at least people would know, a lot more than has been rumored.
Right. But
people would be like, oh, he's going to play the game, but he's out of here once the game's over.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
This is actually, if he leaves, it in ways is almost more Kevin Durant than Lincoln leaving in terms of like where it leaves us in terms of dominoes having already fallen in other places.
The Twitter hellscape that will come if he does leave.
Yeah, which, I mean, our listeners are probably not part of that hellscape, but please don't tweet at him if he does.
Don't tweet at him. I'm not going to be mad at him at all if he leaves. Like I think that he's a really good kid. I think that it will be an extremely calculated decision. It'll suck a lot. Yeah, it will suck if he leaves. But we'll be okay. I mean, it'll suck next year, but we'll figure something out. But that's just where I lean right now. And I'm not the kind, usually I'm not I'm going to be pessimistic, so I'm not disappointed. That's not generally how I am. Yeah, that's usually Nathan. I'm usually the one that's like, oh yeah, this great thing is going to happen for us. Definitely. It's definitely going to happen. So I don't know. I just feel like
there'd be more smoke
to play the bowl game.
He's talking with so-and-so kind of thing. If it was happening, maybe he's just really good at keeping it locked down. I think if he was going to do it, I mean, if he stays, he's NIL for him in the state of Oklahoma is going to be nuts, but it's probably the same anywhere, but really here.
But I guess my thing is, I think the kind of guy who feels this like sense of duty to be a leader and see things through is also the kind of guy who recognizes like, I will be God here.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe so. Maybe that's important.
Luckily,
I don't think it is, but
we should know in like 2 weeks. So we don't have to wait that long.
I mean, but yeah, 2 weeks, that's going to feel like forever. Honestly, like that's going to feel like forever if we have to wait 2 weeks.
Well, it probably won't even be that long, but certainly by 2 weeks. So
I'm hoping like a week tops.
That's probably more realistic. I was being cautious.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm going to be a wreck if it takes 2 weeks to get that.
It'll be fine. We'll beat Oregon by 40, and they'll interview him at the end of the game, and he'll say he's staying, and it'll be fine.
There we go. That'll be great. Speaking of things that are taking way too damn long to get announced and happen, what the hell how's this defensive staff going to get filled out? Like, why has that not happened?
I don't know.
Playoff teams, man.
specifically defensive tackle. Like, do you think the DT coach is in the playoff too?
I have no clue. I kind of wouldn't be surprised if he's still kind of trying to figure it out. Which at that point, I'd wonder, why would he do it smart to just immediately dismiss Tibbs or Kane if you didn't know who you're going to try and take, or if you didn't have like a list. But I don't know. It's kind of weird that how quiet that is. It sounds like Jay Biley, I don't know how to say his name, from Bama is going to be the quarterbacks coach, which I think is a pretty solid hire. But as far as defensive tackles, it's been crickets outside of the possibility of bringing the Clemson guy with him, which Todd Bates, which I don't think is going to happen. So.
Right. I keep expecting to see something about that break,
Yeah.
and it just hasn't happened, which it makes me think that maybe it is a playoff coach, and I don't know who the hell it would be, but it makes me think that it's possible. And I assume that if it is, it's going to be a great hire.
Yeah.
Because all of those guys are pretty damn good.
Sure. I couldn't even name like Cincinnati's defensive line coach.
I have no idea.
But
we're hiring Luke Fickle for tackles.
For DTs. That would work.
Yeah.
It's we'll see. It's weird and
tired of the pressure.
Do we have any idea what the hell this bowl game is going to be?
Is it going to be? First off, not a guarantee. Like we've talked about this before we started the pod, but like Oregon's down 30 players, not for COVID reasons,
which is insane.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
But the thing about that is that if then they're down, like at that point, if you lose like 10 guys to COVID the day of, it's like, oh, probably can't play football.
Right. Which, I mean, I don't know how the testing thing works. They might even be beyond, they might not be testing guys. I don't know at this point, but it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. Like, I just have to assume the game is going to happen, and it'll be interesting to see. Like, I wish that it wasn't going to be this way, because if OU came out and played really well, then we could look at it and be like, shit, Lincoln sucked this year, and like all it took was a coach that actually gave a shit for us to actually, go in and take care of business. But now if we take care of business, it's just going to be like, yeah, cool, it was Bob, but the reason why it happened is because they were down 30 guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the best players on both teams are out. The whole staffs are basically gutted. It's basically a novelty game of seeing Bob.
Well, the thing it's going to be is catharsis, which is not a rational emotion, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be about an emotional healing experience for the Oklahoma football program. And I'm fine with that.
I hope it is. I mean, that assumes
well, the alternative is frankly too terrible to behold. And
yeah, the alternative is we go in and lose, and
I don't even suck. But would it? I mean, yes, losing is not ideal, but you can't take anything away from this game.
Oh, no, I agree.
So if we lose, I honestly will just be like, nah, let's start the Brent era, because there's nothing about it, unless like Caleb got hurt, like unless somebody like important got hurt that is important, that carries over to next year, outside of like a feel good thing. So I don't know.
I just feel like it's OU, like we kind of need a win, it kind of feels like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, obviously it'll be easy to move on from it because of the circumstances if we do lose. But man, it would be really cool to just go out there.
Well, I think you can say the same about Oregon. They probably feel like they need a win. So sure, it's the same thing that happened to us happened to them. So
absolutely, but I don't give a shit about Oregon. Fuck them.
Yeah, so. But I'm just saying you could. It's not one side alone that has that feeling.
No.
But the good thing is their side has Anthony Brown and ours doesn't. So
yes, ours has, for sure. So.
Very much not Anthony Brown.
Unless he transfers, and then it's just he's
watch Anthony Brown just like tear us up now that I've made fun of him.
Talk shit about him. Yep. Wow.
He is like a 60-year, so if he's ever going to do it, this is the time.
This is the game.
Boston College's own Anthony Brown.
The
Jeez.
the adjective the San Antonio Express News used to describe Anthony Brown is embattled.
That's
He
not a bad
is
one.
embattled quarterback Anthony Brown. Which is,
Yep. I
love
think
that.
anybody that came from Boston College, it's you're pretty embattled.
Yeah, I've been to that campus. It is definitely a campus. So,
Wow. Real quick, we haven't talked about Jaron Kanak,
Oh yeah.
and I think we need to do
Venables
that.
special right there.
Yeah.
You know, you know.
If you know, you know. OU, I think OU is going to become white linebacker U now, which is cool. I mean,
We're
it's
stealing Clemson's place on the mantle. They also have safeties. We need to get us some of those. I miss Tidy Armin. So
Tidy Armin. Yeah,
he would have
of course.
flourished.
Well,
But
it's, I mean, all
the
of
reason-
the truly great football programs have a white linebacker who is a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
And we
can
might
talk
have
shit
two
about
now.
Ben Bowler all we want, but that dude was a crazy person, but he was also a very good college linebacker. So
Yeah.
I'm completely
so is
fine with
Skowski.
that. Yeah, same deal with Skowski. So
Yeah. But Kanak, like, what a weird situation, you know?
Yeah.
And
he
I
handled
think
it as
the
weird as
adults-
possible.
I think the adults in this situation are being ridiculous. You know, that includes Brent Venables. I think Brent Venables is being ridiculous in
Yeah.
regards to this very situation. This
Yeah.
kid will not play football for Clemson. He is
Yeah.
not going to do it. But Brent Venables is like, I can't offer you a scholarship yet. I'm not going to recruit you.
Yeah.
And so the kid's just like, okay, well, I'm just going to enroll at Oklahoma and then you'll have
Sign
to
my
offer me then.
financial aid agreement.
Yeah. And my thing here is I don't ever want to pass up an opportunity to shit on Dabo because I feel like at a certain point, Dabo just needs to tell Brent that it's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
I hadn't considered this, but every single time something weird or stupid happens in recruiting from now on, we can just say it's Dabo's fault.
we
Yeah.
could. I mean, that's what I support that totally.
He
Like,
learned all of his bad habits from Dabo.
I mean, like seriously though, just tell Brent it's okay.
Yeah.
He's not going to come here.
Zero
You know?
parties in this situation like handled it in a normal way. Like
Right.
it
Absolutely.
is the
And
strangest thing.
I think Brent's stance of like telling the kid that he should go to Clemson, I think that's fine. If that's your first move, is to tell the kid you should go to Clemson. It's where you committed. You wanted to go there at one point. Go to Clemson. And then if the kid's just like no, then be like, okay, well then come here. You know, and Dabo, same thing. Just be like, it's fine. I mean, he's not coming here, so he may as well go play for Brent. You know, that's where he wants to go.
Me every year, like South Carolina. So
Yeah. You know, like shit. So like, I just don't understand why this has to be so hard. You know, it just should have
it's
been.
the weird like valor thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Coaches take that type of stuff too like super seriously, like when it's their mentor.
Yeah. And I'm going to be glad that past this year, it's going to be over. Like we'll never have to worry about this again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm also extremely glad that we got Jaron Kanak because he's freaking awesome.
Yeah. That's a fast human being for his size.
I mean, he's a fast human being. Like he's going to be one of the fastest guys on the team as a linebacker, you know, like dudes don't run that. Like, I think I heard someone say that his 100 meters was faster than Trey Brown's fastest 100 meters.
Really?
That's stupid.
Holy shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, this is a 6'2", 215-pound linebacker, you know, running faster than an NFL defensive back. You know,
did you guys watch his huddle? Because it's really funny. He's like, you have to remember he's playing like, you know, small Kansas kids, but he's just running over them the whole video. He's just so obviously bigger, stronger, faster. It's pretty amusing.
Yeah.
I can't get over the clip of him in at quarterback where he scores a touchdown and trucks literally 7 defenders on the play.
Yeah. It's awesome.
There's no like, he doesn't try to juke anybody. It's just, I'm going to run you over.
Yeah.
He's going to run you over. Yeah. Which is absolutely perfect from what you want to see from a linebacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
He looked like Sunshine throwing lead blocks out there. He's just
Yes.
bowling people over.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yeah. Cool. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Oregon's band didn't make it in time, so the Pride had to lend them some players. There you go. There's some
Wait,
news.
what?
There was like a pep event, and it snowed in Oregon yesterday.
Okay.
And so
like go
their
band
their band wasn't able to make it. And so some Pride people had to do the Oregon pep stuff.
That's awesome. I would have done that so fast.
Absolutely.
That's probably not even true because I never wanted to do anything when I was in the band.
Actually. You would have been drunk.
But theoretically, if it was like required, I would have had fun doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I'm sure
I would have been very mad if I did that and did not get an Oregon dry fit out of it. I'll say that.
for sure. But interesting stuff. So
I'll be curious to see which uniforms they wear.
Are we home or away? Do you know?
I don't know.
I've given probably less thought to this bowl game as a whole than like any other bowl game in my entire life that I've really followed OU football. Like I just don't really care about it. So,
and it's also on. It's 8:30. It starts at 8:30.
Does it really?
Wednesday.
I didn't know that.
It's a late kickoff.
Hang on.
Yeah, Alamo Bowl's always super
8:15
late.
to be clear.
8:15. My bad.
It might kick off at 8:30.
There is a 0% chance that my dad will be awake throughout that whole thing. He will fall asleep at halftime. So
that for Ryan though, that's primetime television though.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Well,
that's
it's not as much now because we're out of daylight savings, so I'm only an hour ahead of you or behind you guys.
Gotcha.
So it's a 7:15 kickoff here.
Wow. Okay.
That's still better. You know, I'm a morning guy, so I don't know about that 8:15 kickoffs. But
yeah, I have a feeling the group message is going to get quiet in the second half.
I'm hoping that we just
for this one.
Yeah, jump out to a 3-touchdown lead so I can just turn it off. But we'll see.
Yep.
You know, last time we were up by 3 scores, it didn't work out well.
I mean, is that not a thing that like I feel like that's a staple of how I felt about watching Lincoln Riley teams is that there was just never a point wherever I ever felt like I could relax and just watch the team play. You know, like up 28 in mid third quarter, and I'm sitting there glued because I'm like, this could go bad at any second. You know, and once it goes bad, it might be over.
Incredibly mentally weak, and they just snowball every single time. It's
and this is actually a thing. So the general sense the entire Lincoln Riley time was, oh God, gotta score a touchdown this drive. Just regardless of the score, it was just like, oh, we better score a touchdown because things could go bad if we don't. And then I go back and I watch I've been watching highlights of games from the Venables era here. And just watching the team, like teams would score occasionally because we were playing in the Big 10. No, the Big 12. We were never playing the Big 10. What am I talking about? We were playing in the Big 12. Teams would score, but they would score in the first half, and then they would not score so much after halftime.
Make adjustments.
And that was really startling, the degree to which, like, for a year, like the entire tenure of Lincoln, we were the team that was adjusted to.
Yeah,
it felt like.
Well, I just felt like, I think that for me as a football fan, I grew up watching Brent Venables defenses. And so it was kind of ingrained in me that like, oh, if things are not going well right now, we will make an adjustment and things will be less bad.
Right.
Like it might not be perfect, but it won't be as bad. But the Mike Stoops era brought this new idea of like, okay, if we look bad in the first quarter, we're probably just screwed.
Yeah.
Because
there are no adjustments coming.
Right. And then I think that persisted into the Alex Grinch era too. Like this year, I can't tell you, like there were so many times where it was like, okay, they scored really easily in the first quarter and, oh, well, they did it again. Shit. Oh, they did it again, and it just like, still part of me, because it was ingrained in me when I was young, still part of me was expecting adjustments all these years, even though I was stupid to. But I'm hopeful that, because I've been doing the same thing. I've been going back and watching, 2010, 2011 highlights. And it's like, yeah, shit, teams were putting up points on us in the first half. And then you look at the final score and it's like, oh, they scored 3 points in the second half and we pulled away.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Like, I'm thinking about comeback wins in the post Venables era. And it's like 2015 Tennessee,
2019 Baylor,
2020 Tech, or 2021 Texas. I guess to a degree, 2020 Texas as well.
Yeah. And two of those, maybe just one of those, but none of those teams were like world beaters. Especially Texas. Texas should never have been up that much. It was just a travesty. That Tennessee team was okay, but it wasn't great. And then that Baylor team, same deal with the Baylor team. So,
yeah,
I mean, they were good, but they weren't. I think their record was better than they were.
Yeah. So, like, essentially four times over the past decade has Oklahoma been losing and then made adjustments that fixed it.
Yeah. Well, and some of it was like that Baylor game. Like, we got lucky as hell.
Yeah.
In the second half.
Yeah. I mean, like both of those Texas games, it's just like random garbage started happening.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I was just tired of watching us be the less physical team. I don't know if we're going to be better. I think there's a decent chance we will be, as OU will be, but
yeah. Oh, sorry. Hang on. I'm tired of give credit where credit is due. 2021 Kansas was a comeback victory.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But if the team that they were playing was in any way comparable along the lines of scrimmage, we just really struggled. And even teams that we had a large talent differential, they would often, just out physical us, and we had to just be more athletic than they were and get by on that. And I was complaining about it before Lincoln left. This is something that I'd had a problem with, and with him. And I was, this year was really kind of being a catalyst of me starting to question if I even thought he was the guy. So, and this is not revisionist. This is, being serious. So, I'm really curious, because I know you guys probably talked about this some last time, but as he goes out to USC, he's not taking over a team that has a good culture right now. He has to build it. And what I was watching, being out physical by teams that are half as talented as his roster, and now he doesn't even have the ingrained, mentality and, culture that he inherited here. I'm not convinced that he can build it. Maybe he can. He's going to have incredible, wide receivers and stuff, but everything else, I don't know. So
I'm not convinced that he knows what it looks like either, because you look at the team, like he coached with Bob for 2 years. He was there 2 years with Bob, and they were successful years, there's no doubt. But those teams by no means were complete. The defenses largely were a disaster, and
2015 defense was okay. 2016 was
decent.
not.
Yeah. 16 awful, but then he hits 2017, and his big move after that year is he gets rid of Schmitty. Like Schmidt and him just did not see eye to eye. And that's his big move. Like, that's really the big stamp on the program that he put after his first year at Oklahoma was, I'm putting my guy Vinny Wiley.
Didn't fire Mike.
It didn't fire Mike. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think that actually speaks to something. Like, I think coaches, regardless of if they're Bob's brother, like Saban would not have kept Mike. Coaches of that caliber would not have kept Mike.
Yeah.
Nick Saban wouldn't have kept him if his name was Mike Saban. He wouldn't have, there's no way.
Well, yeah. Now it's just Nick
Saban. I'm curious if Saban has brothers.
That's different.
I feel like Saban rips into people he's not related to on the sideline. I feel like if he had a brother, we'd have seen the death on the sideline by now.
I think so.
Be like Bo Pelini and Carl.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My goodness.
Anyway, I just don't know. I'm not convinced at all. I
Yeah.
think he's going to have incredible skill talent, and then they're just going to be pretty soft everywhere else.
Yeah.
A little
I mean,
bit like
I'm not
they-
going to predict that he fails at USC.
No, Pac-12 sucks too much to
Right.
completely fail.
But it's, I mean, like the reality is like the thing about being at Oklahoma is that you get every team in the Big 12's best every week.
Yeah.
And you just got to be able to break their spirits, right?
Yep.
And like this was just his entire tenure. This was never a team that put people away and made them give up. Teams when they played Oklahoma, they were in it till the end. They were there was no ability to convince the other side that things were hopeless.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast today. It had Alan Kenny on it, and I think he's a smart guy. You know, I think I generally agree with a lot of his stuff. Sometimes he annoys me, but the thing he talked about was that there's a big difference in mentality between NFL and college football. Like the NFL is very much a survive and advance every week. You know, if you can win, that's all that's important. Doesn't matter how you do it, just freaking win the games.
Yeah.
And college football is about going out there and just beating the other team's ass as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
because style matters. Yeah.
Right. Style matters, how you're playing, like, and it's about developing habits, because if you're just going out there and just surviving and advancing, you're not improving from week to week the way that you need to, you know. And if you're like, you're probably not playing to your potential if you're just barely squeaking by every week. And that really interested me, because it was like, yeah, that's because it did seem like in a lot of games, Lincoln got into a situation where it's like, okay, I think we can win this game. So I'm going to start trying to like workshop some ideas for future events, you know. And that's what they do in the NFL. It's important. You need to do that, but that's not college football. Go out there, and if the outside zone play is working, run that fucking play every damn down, all the way until you score.
It's like the Baylor hitch routes all the way down the field.
Right.
Or
Kick
LSU throwing at Justin Broyles.
Right. Kick the shit out of the other team. And then once you're up by 50 in the fourth quarter, try your shit. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But that seemed to be something that I've never been one to talk about Lincoln getting. I don't think he gets like conservative in his play calling. I've never agreed with that take, but I do think that he does get to where he's like, okay, I know that this will work, so I'm going to try something else to see if that will work. And then all of a sudden you're going 3 and out multiple times in a game, and then the other team's back into it because your defense isn't good enough to handle that, you know? And so that to me that's the most I'm willing to concede about like Lincoln.
I think he gets
in the way
conservative,
he's
but in the way you're just saying, where he just doesn't keep his foot on the gas pedal of attacking what he knows will hurt the other team.
Yeah.
So if that's what's conservative, or what we're calling conservative, then I think he gets conservative. But
Well,
I don't think it's
like,
that he's just like, oh, I don't want to score this time. Like, I don't think that's
No.
Right. Yeah. But it's, you know, I think this is the thing that I hate giving old heads credit for anything. But like when they talk about him getting cute with it, like he was a serial getting cute with it guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
that's
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that's exactly what I mean. Like, and I don't think of that as conservative. I think of that as what Ryan said.
I agree. If that's not conservative, then I don't think he got conservative. But I definitely think, as Ryan said, he got cute with it way too much. So
it's like he got bored. It's like he's like,
well, that's the problem with excessively smart people. I know, like Josh McCuistion said it. It's like, you know, they think everyone else is a dumbass. So I think he suffered from that a little bit. So
that's not a good thing in a football coach. You don't want that.
No, you want some meathead in there. There's a nice balance. So
right.
But it's like the result of a team that is not committed to the idea of plowing the other side under every week and running outside zone 100 times because it's going to kick their ass and it'll be funny. Is that like I think about 2018, you have Kyler freaking Murray behind the best offensive line in the country, and like Quinnen Williams gets interviewed, and he like is pretty certain that this team is a joke. Like he is like outwardly disrespectful of this. And you know, that's and on the one hand, that's Quinnen Williams at Alabama. So, you know, maybe you need more than Kyler Murray and the best offensive line in the country to earn his respect. But there's like,
they're disrespected every year, don't you know?
there's just not like, like if you never demonstrate that like you can put a football game out of reach, no one will ever believe that a football game against you is out of reach.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every team we played the last few years has had to believe they could hang around, and most of them have, you know. So
I mean, yeah, the 2018 team, like we had the best offense we've ever had, and most of our games were close. You know, like Iowa State was unnecessarily close that year. Obviously, we lost to Texas. Texas game in the Big 12 championship, unnecessarily close. West Virginia, complete and total shootout. Even Kansas put up 40 on us. You know, like
the Puka Williams game. Yeah, that was
fun. Like my God, like
that defense was just hard to watch.
Yeah, it was. But just all of this is like, you know, it's like I was saying earlier, it's not hard to make a case that Lincoln was didn't do a good job here. You know, it's not hard to make that case. And I think I'm pretty inclined to make it because of how things have turned out. But
good job is relative. I don't know how much better he left it than when he got it here. So if you want to measure it by that stick, you know, there's a case.
Yeah. Well, that, and just, I don't think he ever overachieved with what he had.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, like there was just always, you know, 2017 was the closest he came to that. And we should have won the fucking national championship that year. And we didn't, you know?
Yeah. In part because he got cute with it at the end of the first half against Georgia, and he went for the squib kick, which was stupid. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. We can get off a whole tangent about that. So.
Oh my God. Okay. So
I try not to think about that game though. It's I tried to excise it from my brain, but
yeah. I think I'll only be able to go back and rewatch it if we win another national championship.
Yeah.
I can't. I waffle between that and the Tebow loss. Between which one was the most painful? But
yeah, I mean, for me, because I was at the freaking Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, like that one's different. But like, if you look at like the direction the program took after that 2008 loss, that one really sucks.
Yeah.
You know, and that
was the actual title game. We still had to win a whole nother game with Georgia, but we were also up 17. So, so that's the real kicker.
It's tough, man. God, it's been tough to be an Oklahoma fan the last 20 years. You know, like there's been a lot of good.
Woe is us and all of our lost
titles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all those close calls, man.
Go be a Tulsa fan. They need another person. Bring it up to a dozen.
Yep.
But I mean, not to extend this much further, because we just keep talking, but I heard someone talk about this, and I think there's a valid point and I think Grinch did a good job, you know, overall, or a better job certainly than Stoops. He did he made strides. But was he the third best defensive coordinator in the state last year? I think there's a case you could make for that. Jim Knowles was certainly better. Yeah, I think the guy at Tulsa might have been better.
Well, they certainly got more out of less.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, Grinch had the most talent and the third ranked defense out of those three, right?
You know, I don't know what the rankings were. I know like 2 years ago, Tulsa had a legitimately good defense. And then that guy got hired this past, just recently to TCU, I think. So,
okay.
But I just think it's interesting, that for his, the strides that he made, he might have been, the third best guy out of three in the state.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And now the best defensive coordinator in the country is on our coaching staff. So that's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Gotta feel pretty good.
Those quarterbacks are gonna feel it when they check into the Ted Roof Inn. Okay. Do we have anything else we want to say?
I just wanted to say real quick, Tulsa did have a higher ranked SP plus defense than we did.
Excellent.
They were 10 spots ahead of us.
Great.
10 spots ahead of us.
So good. So good.
And that was after they lost a ton from the year before.
Yeah. And Oklahoma State.
Like all they had like 2 really good corners that both transferred. And anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Fun times.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Oklahoma Drill. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on the Google Play Store, on Podbean. Find us on Spotify or on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter. Leave us reviews. Share it with a friend. I'm still interested in the idea of us recording slightly more frequently than we did this past semester. We'll see if that happens. No commitments. And we'll leave you with that. Hopefully there's a football game on Wednesday.